Welcome back to the On the Pace podcast. Like I said yesterday with the podcast I did about Australia, tonight we will be covering the Phoenix race in IndyCar. Just a couple quick thoughts before we kind of break down what happened. Off of qualifying, and guess my quick thoughts about qualifying. A lot of talk about David Malukas and Mick Schumacher. Those were kind of the two standouts from qualifying. I'll get more into both later in the race, but Malukas did take pole, and Schumacher did very well for his first time on an oval. That's something that I, of course, appreciate very much because I always root for Mick. I kind of discussed this in my last podcast talking about F1, but I have a soft spot for Haas. So I have followed his career pretty closely, and of course, with him being the son of Michael, the name carries a lot. You can't see it, but my poster of Dale Earnhardt, names matter in motorsports, and so I've always followed him closely. That was kind of some of the standouts from qualifying. But I'm going to jump right into it. Just a little bit race review. Towards the end, we're going to talk a bit about my predictions for Arlington, a race that no one really knows. So my predictions, in my opinion, are pretty safe. But yeah, we're talking Phoenix. Short oval track has been off the calendar since 2018, I do believe. Spoiler, if you didn't watch it, you probably know by now. This podcast is coming out pretty late as a race review, honestly. But same guy who won it in 18, won it in 26, Joseph Newgarden. And it was a cool race. It was a fun race, a lot of passing, a lot of strategy, a lot of, I guess you could say, critical crashes, not necessarily crashes where you go, oh my gosh, are they okay? I feel so bad. But a lot of when you go racing, you're going to crash cars, as Mark Webber famously said. But what I enjoy about Phoenix in general is that it's not Indianapolis. It's not a super speedway. Obviously, it's not a street course, but it's a short oval racing track. It's about a mile long. I know it's a tad bit like 0.068 more than a mile, but it's a short mile. It's fun with IndyCar. Obviously, NASCAR picked it for a long time about for their championship. I do think that in general, Phoenix is a good track. Personally, it's one of the tracks that I absolutely hate racing on. I was racing on it earlier for iRacing NASCAR. Not a fan of it in any regard for me, which I'm nobody in any regard, but it proves it's a difficult track in some regard. Lap times are barely over 20 seconds. And more importantly, I think the two main things is traffic. The lapped cars become a nightmare in general for the leaders, for overtakes, for gaining positions, for catching up to the leaders. But also tire wear becomes incredibly important. Obviously, when you have IndyCar ovals, that front left is big. And that's something that Newgarden has always done well in ovals in general, managing his tires. Penske gets their first win of the season on the board. Obviously, at this point, we're between Penske and Ganassi for who's won a race because we're only 2 races in. But also, a couple things that this weekend gave us was a breakout performance from Kyle Kirkwood. I mean, he had a great performance last at St. Pete's, huge qualifying from David Malukas, and my honestly most personal memorable moment of the weekend was Alex Palou crashing. Now, obviously, VK was pretty much on him. That crash was on him. He saw a gap that, honestly, I saw for a second too. I was watching the TV just as much as you were, but he took it, Alex tried to close on it, and it did way more damage to Palou than VK or anyone else involved. There was a lot of spinning, a lot of wheel-to-wheel, true wheel-to-wheel action this weekend, and I think that's one of the things that personally for me I enjoyed. Because it wasn't I felt bad for Alex. I feel bad with most any driver crashes. I kind of talked about this with my F1 yesterday that I'm just a fan of motorsports. I really don't have anyone that I, as a whole, just dislike. I mean, there's obviously some meme drivers, Stingray Rob being one of them. But as a whole, I want everyone to fish. I want everyone to do well, and not everyone can, and that's the entertainment of the sport. Obviously, a big learning moment for Mick Schumacher in his transition to ovals. I already kind of touched on that because I guess that's who I'm really rooting for this year, is just for Mick to do well. But we're going to start with the bigger picture as well of Phoenix. It's a big deal. I kind of like that they did the doubleheader with Indy and then NASCAR. I did not actually watch the NASCAR race. I saw that Blaney won, but I did not touch on any of the NASCAR race in general, just solely because I was exhausted from staying up for F1. But I kind of like that aspect of the doubleheader. When you're going to share tracks between IndyCar and NASCAR, I really do think doubleheader weekend, it's fun. Joey Logano was being an announcer the entire time. Truthfully, Joey did not have that much to say at all. It was kind of interesting though, on the doubleheader side of things. The way they interacted with the NASCAR crowd was interesting. And I mean, this can kind of be, I'm trying to review IndyCar right now, but there's a part of me that it showed why NASCAR is a little bit hard for some people to get into. It's almost still hard for me to get into. And Joey Logano was not great in the press box. They're kind of just, they had the drivers pace them out and they were like, oh, this is cool, but it ain't NASCAR. And it's like, no, it's not. It's a different series and it's okay. But, obviously the good old boys, which I completely look at like right now, oh my gosh, but the good old boys, they like their kind of attitude driven NASCAR guys. So whatever. But it kind of, Phoenix as a whole kind of leads to a question of why doesn't IndyCar have more short ovals? Some of the best racing is on short ovals. I don't really know, though, what track they would go to. I guess that's kind of the question, obviously, as well, with some of the short oval tracks around the country that, I guess I'm qualifying. Why don't they do dirt races? Well, there's an obvious reason. But Phoenix as a whole, it forces drivers to do three things extremely well. Phoenix forces drivers to brake aggressively into turn one, manage the front right tire, and navigate constant traffic. Traffic was an issue this race. When the entire field is running lap time separated by tenths of a second, overtaking becomes difficult, especially when you have that traffic. Obviously, back markers, bench warmers, whatever you want to call them, ever motorsport series you're used to. Obviously, the only one that doesn't really have that is WRC, which we'll touch on tomorrow. But all this means to brake aggressively, manage the front right tire, and navigate constant traffic. All this means is that strategy matters, timing matters. And that's exactly how the race fully unfolded. I think one of the big surprises that we kind of mentioned was David Malukas going to pole. Huge moment for Malukas. He's always been a talented oval driver, a Penske pole. If you're a Penske fan, that was great to see. I'm happy for Malukas. Obviously, there's a lot of people who aren't Penske fans, but this race was pretty much dominated by Penske. I kind of talked about it in the last Indy podcast. Where are we with Penske? Ganassi was objectively kind of looking better than them at St. Pete's, but it's that age-old IndyCar situation of oval versus street course. And after watching Penske get pole, get a win, and do very well, you're kind of looking at this idea of it. It might be Ganassi on the streets and Penske on the ovals, which will be exciting to watch. It makes for an interesting championship. Obviously, Palou got wrecked very quickly. He was kind of scooting up the grid there, scooting up through positions, wrecked very early on in the race. But yeah, it's looking like Penske's dangerous on the ovals, and they have drivers who excel on the ovals. Newgarden, and now we can kind of argue Malukas as a whole will excel on the ovals. He finished very well. Obviously, he did not convert the pole. But behind Malukas, Award with the McLaren, and then Joseph Newgarden. Yeah, Palou did not qualify super high, almost as high as I expected him to. Phoenix, difficult weekend for him. But that was just kind of the starting grid. Obviously, when the race started, the field spread out very quickly. This was something that was kind of interesting to me. As someone who, over the last couple of years, has tried, has really started taking the getting into IndyCar journey, the field spread out pretty quickly, considering I'm sure that's, of course, down to the short oval track. It's not a super speedway. They immediately start managing their tires. They're thinking about strategy. They're listening to the spar. They're talking about the calls. Within the first stint, teams started splitting strategies. Some went aggressive early. Others decided to stretch tire life, But you can see Newgarden slowly starting to move forward. And that's objectively what won the race. Aggressive strategy from Penske. Newgarden is extremely good at something that doesn't show up in every stat, but If you're a motorsports fan, you know it, and that is he saved the tires. He understands how to keep the front right alive longer than his competitors. Now, a short oval like Phoenix, that becomes the difference between fourth and winning the race. Kyle Kirkwood is another one. Best oval runs of his career. He's coming off that, and he went right back to it. Kirkwood looked incredibly comfortable. Kirkwood's someone that we're going to talk about a little bit later, but he looks smooth in traffic. He can serve tires well. He's staying in the fight all along the race. Kind of reminds me of last year in Formula One. There was this joke going around at the beginning of the season, especially when Max had slowly started falling off, and there was normally at least one McLaren on the podium, maybe two, but it was that George Russell spawns on the podium. He does nothing and he spawns. And obviously that's not true. He would run a good race every single race. But Kirkwood's slowly starting to remind me of that. He's just slowly starting to remind me of that. Like this, doesn't get the TV time. They don't necessarily talk about him. They're like, oh yeah, and Kyle Kirkwood's coming up. And that's it. But he's slowly spawning in on podiums and having good races. Smooth in traffic. He conserved his tires well. And he stayed in the fight all along the race. I mean, he's someone that I'm really rooting for this season. And if he can fully put it all together, I think we can see a good push from Kyle Kirkwood as a whole. Yeah, talked about Palou crashing. That was a big one. He was working his way through traffic. VK caught him on the back, spun out, wheel came off. And I saw some people kind of being like, well, that's Phoenix. That's what you get on a short oval track. That's what's going to happen. But personally, I kind of blame, it's the famous Ayrton Senna quote. If you see a gap and you don't take it, you're not a race car driver. Well, I mean, it was there, I guess. It was there. But, I mean, as a whole, yeah, VK completely caused that big time. And he moved slightly higher on entry trying to clear traffic, and then boom, it's over. So, outside wall. It was enough to end his race. And that kind of goes back to the Ganassi versus Penske idea, is that as a whole, like Ganassi is kind of just relying on Palou at this point. Obviously, I don't fully think that's true, but at the end of the day, where was Dixon this entire race? I don't remember seeing him. Do you? Ganassi's running on Palou, and that's what creates the interesting dynamic right now between Ganassi and Penske. They are the top two. They have been for a while. And the Andretti cars, I mean, they do well. The McLaren cars do well, no matter what McLaren wants to tell you, that they're doing just as good in an IndyCar, whatever Zach Brown decides to come up with. But it's a huge moment for Alex. Crashes like this are not good for his season. Very early on. Obviously, it's good that's early on because he has the ability to bounce back. But at the end of the day, crashes like this could... And it wasn't his fault, too. It wasn't his fault, but it still matters when it comes to the championship as a whole, right? Race, as it kind of moved into the final stint, Newgarden takes lead. Kirkwood's there. Malukas is still there, but long runs began favoring Newgarden big time. And once Newgarden smelled the opportunity, that man's going to take it. He is going to take it. He had fresher tires, took the lead, got in clean air. And like we see in motorsports, sometimes true clean air behind the wheel is a good driver in clean air, and he's gone. Ain't no one catching him. Kirkwood gets second, and Malukas completes the podium. Great showing from Penske as a whole. I really like what Kirkwood's doing. I think he's sneaky. I don't think there's a lot of spotlight on him right now. I think he's being sneaky. And that's the beauty of it, is Kirkwood can come out and do well. And when Palou crashes, who are you looking for, right? With Palou crashing, Lord only knows how many points he can score. Now, I like I said, Palou crashing was not his fault, and it will probably not be an every weekend thing. But Kirkwood scored some good points, and that's important. I kind of want to touch on this. Mick Schumacher. Mick Schumacher's transition to IndyCar has been good. Tough first race again, and one of those crashes that weren't necessarily Schumacher's fault, and he then goes and gets fourth during qualifying. Car out on track, puts in first for a while, and then gets fourth. I think it's a good transition for him. I think he's looking comfortable. Almost, unfortunately, want to say that this is almost a series that he belonged in from the start. I mean, there was a lot with Haas and him. Bringing in him and Nikita Mazepin 2021, the car was awful. Everything that went down with Mazepin, as you might remember him. He was a rookie. Gunther Steiner is a very divisive figure in motorsports as a whole. I don't think he really gave a lot. Haas gets rid of Mazepin, brings back Kevin Magnussen, K-Mag, oh, I miss you, but brings back Kevin Magnussen, and then what kind of happens is Mick does not have a great 2022 season, gets cut, races in WEC, and is now back in open wheel, and I think this was kind of always the series he belonged in. Obviously, everyone loved Michael. Everyone loved Michael Schumacher. He means so much to the motor racing in general, let alone the sport of F1. And I kind of touched on this at the beginning of the podcast, but last names carry a lot of weight. Look at Junior, I mean, even look at Verstappen. His dad, while not a good Formula One driver, was a Formula One driver. Last names carry weight, and I think there was a lot of pressure on him. But when you're going to Haas with a terrible car, it's not always going to be good. But he grew up in Europe. He's used to the street circuits kind of vibe, or the, more importantly, set tracks, street circuit set tracks. He's not used to ovals. And this man put it in fourth. And I can only congratulate Mick Schumacher for doing that. He had a pit stop that went poorly, and that's why he ended up towards the back of the grid. It's on his team. It's not necessarily on him. He dropped a bit at the start of the race. Obviously, this is his first time ever really putting it on ovals. But qualifying 1-lap pace, he looked really well, And also with the banking, that's another thing that I haven't really touched on. Besides your race in Zandvoort, you're not getting banking in Formula One. So I'm sure that was an adjustment too. He showed solid improvement throughout the entire weekend until that pit stop, which again, can we really blame him for? His biggest challenge was the traffic management, especially when he kind of fell back. But only love, only appreciation, and only respect to Mick Schumacher, especially being on a short oval. This is not the Indianapolis 500. This is not a super speedway. This is a short oval, and he did very, very, very well. 2 races, 2 teams have won. I want to talk about Andretti just a tad bit. Kirkwood is carrying that team right now. But right now, it's kind of the big 4 teams being Penske, Andretti, Ganassi, and McLaren doing enough to stick around. Penske looking good on ovals as always. Ganassi putting too much in Alex, and then McLaren. So a little bit with McLaren. They are fast, but they are inconsistent. I like Pato, mostly because he's Mexican national with an Irish last name. I just find that interesting, and he's basically Patty O'Ward from Mexico. I like Pato. He's starting to look like he's not fully there yet. I don't think he can compete for championships. I think he can compete for wins. McLaren's obviously put a lot behind him, but he's not necessarily looking like he's going to compete for championships. And I think that's concerning. The dude's 26, 25. Yeah, he's 26, and you just kind of look at it and you go, where's what we were promised? We were promised a next generational talent. We were promised, honestly, in a weird way, Jack Villeneuve going from IndyCar to Formula One. And if he wasn't going to ever make Formula One with McLaren, we were promised he's going to be a generational talent. And yes, he ran second in the championship last year, but he looks like he's going to not ever beat Alex, possibly not beat Newgarden. McLaughlin, Dixon, I mean, he looks like he's fluttering almost. And I don't know if that's McLaren, if that's Award, or if that's the Chevy engine battle between Chevy and Honda. Chevy teams dominated Phoenix. Not super surprising, which leads more to Award's problem and McLaren's problem. You could blame the Chevy engine all you want last year, but they did well. They did well on ovals. It kind of goes back to what IndyCar is, ovals and street circuits. Honda's been better on street circuits. They dominated last year, though. My bet is still that Honda is the better engine between the two in this series. But as a whole, man, McLaren's got to get it together. But I think IndyCar is not what they're worried about right now as a massive organization. But more importantly, Award's got to pull through. He's got to be the golden child that we were promised. It's like when you play FIFA, you find a wonder kid, right? You just find that wonder kid, and he's got 90 potential. He's sitting at 75, but he flutters out with potential at an 84. This is kind of what we're looking at Award with. But yeah, the engine battle's heating up. I appreciate it finally instead of just absolutely total domination by Honda, even though I kind of am a Japanese engine guy. So, they're doing better than they are in that Aston over there, but Chevrolet did pretty well on ovals. They did well with Penske and Andretti. So we'll see what happens. 2 races, early picture. Newgarden, again, right now looking good. Kirkwood, I'm going to keep hammering this name. Cal Kirkwood is the underdog, the dark pick for the championship this year. And it was a tough weekend for Alex, but he's still my pick. He's still my number 1 pick for who's going to win. You almost can't bet against the guy. It's like Max in Formula One. You can't bet against him. And if Pheonix taught us anything, it's that championship fights this year might be incredibly close. And I'm happy for that. And if the rest of the season produces racing like this, we're in for something good. All right, I kind of want to get into predictions that I did not throw out for Pheonix, but I'm going to throw out for the streets of Arlington. We are having a Miami GP style Grand Prix in Arlington, Texas, where we're just going to go around the Cowboys Stadium. If anyone's Cowboys fans, any of the drivers are Cowboys fans, I hope for their sake that maybe they can get a win there, because God knows the Cowboys can't. But new circuit, and it's beautiful. I love predicting on new circuits because no one knows what's going to happen. So I'm going to play it safe as all get out. I only have top 3 for the podium, and then my 1 prediction that I want to see that I'm hoping comes true, that I also think will come true. So first off, who I think will win the Arlington Grand Prix is Alex Palou. I think he bounces back. I think a new street circuit heavily favors Palou. My number 2 prediction, even though I said there are question marks around him, I'm going to go with Award. He has been better around the streets. I also think, even though I am saying that we need to see more from him, that his ability to kind of pick up on new circuits is good. And for my number 3, I'm going to spawn Kyle Kirkwood in there. I think he might be the best able to get it done. And I just hope he keeps stepping up on podiums, man. I really think he's the dark horse for a secret, almost title championship run. And then my other final prediction is that Schumacher will be in the top 10. I really hope this comes true. It'd be great for Mick, great for the team. So those are my predictions for street circuit at Arlington. I will come back with the race review then. Tomorrow, we're going to be breaking down my predictions and general analysis of WRC at Kenya. And so very excited for that. Kenya is a great rally circuit. Kenya is my favorite circuit on the WRC calendar. I love it. If there's one race in WRC that I could go to, I would choose Kenya. It's a great gravel and dirt mix. It's awesome. So, going to be breaking that down tomorrow. If you could subscribe, like, wherever you're listening to, I would heavily appreciate it. And tell me whatever I can work on. So, thank you, race fans, and good night.